Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Ksuvas daf Samach Ches. We are going to begin on the very bottom of Samach Zayin Mebez, 3 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Abba Havitzayr Zuze Besiduri. So Rabbi Abba, regarding giving charity, he used to wrap up the money in a kerchief, V'shadile lachure, and he used to put it behind him. And he would find himself by the poor people. Says Rashi, umatzli ene miramoi. Says Rashi, umat einav klapi achorav, and his eyes would face backwards. Liro shlo ramai, so that no trickster should come. Yatira, and untie his kerchief. She'oisa atzmo ani, he made himself poor. V'aniyim boyim umatirin osam. Poor people would come and they would untie it. So Rabbi Chanina Havi. So 1 second. Just want to make sure there's no question here. So this is Rabbi Abba. Okay. Rabbi Chanina Havi hahu anya the Havi ragil lishdure le arba zuze kol mali shabbatah. So Rabbi Chanina had this poor person who used to come every Erev Shabbos and used to give him 4 zuz. Yom echad shadrinhu nihile biyad debesu. So it was given by his wife. Asay amrule lotzarach. She said he doesn't need it. So my chazas. So Rabbi Chanina said, what makes you think he doesn't need this money? Shamid havi ka'amrule. I heard that he was saying, Bama atatzoyed. Said, what do you buy? What food do you get? As we continue to Samach Chesed Aleph. Bitlei kesef o bitlei zahav. So it's Rashi says mapois shel pishtin, these very fine garments and cloths of silver or gold. Amar hainu de Amir Belezer boy benachsek toivel or moyin. Go and give strength to the tricksters. Shel moli hein hayinu chaytim chol yom. If it wasn't for them, we would be sinning all the day. In other words, it's true. It's and this is actually question 12. This is what I was waiting for. Madua hichsik Rabbi Lezer toivel or moyin. So because there are people that are lying and tricking and acting like they're poor and collecting when they don't really need, so therefore it makes us less responsible for not being as charitable. Shnemar l'kar lecha el Hashem. He called to Hashem. B'hay b'chait. V'tani Rabbi Chia barav medifni Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha omer kol mal einam in the tzedakah. Any person who basically does not give charity on a regular basis, it's like an idol worship. They shouldn't do anything which is sinful. So that's found in the same place of v'kar Hashem v'hay b'chachet. So a person who doesn't give tzedakah, it's actually like he's an idol worshiper. And some people explain the notion is the fact that you worship money. That is like an avodah zarah in and unto itself. Tan Rabbanan hamasami es einai. One who literally blinds his eyes, which obviously doesn't mean it literally. It says Rashi Maris atzma ki'ilu enu semuya. You act like you don't see what's in front of you. V'ham tzaveh es bitnai. One who bloats his stomach. V'ham kafeach es shaikai. One whose thigh is shrunk. Says Rashi, ki'ilu shaika nechvelas enu nifter min olam asher v'du kach. So if you act this way, this is what's going to end up happening to you. Hamakabel tzedakah min sarach v'kach soifa enu nifter min olam asher v'du kach. If you collect charity even though you don't need it, so your punishment is going to be one day you actually will need it. Tanan Hasam. Ein machayavano salim charas beisai v'es kol klei tashmishai. So says Rashi, Reisha masnisin mi sheish lo masayim zuz lo yitol leket shechopeya. So it's brought down over there that you're not allowed to collect tzedakah if you have assets of 200 or more. And some say the word tzedakah, if you see the gematria, the numerical value of it, Sadik is $90, 4, Kuf is 100, and Hay is 5. It's 199. You can collect tzedakah if you have only the value, the net worth of 199. Once you have 200, no. So the question is, how is this evaluated? So it says Rashi, so once you have 200, you can't collect. Now, we don't require you to sell your house and all your kli tashmisho to get to the 200. So in other words, it's talking about liquid assets. So it's very possible you may have a little house you live in, and you own the house, but that's not part of the cheshbon. You can still collect tzedakah. A person who uses golden vessels, yishtamish kli kesef. The kli kesef yishtamish kli nechayshis. Amar zvid lo kasha. Ha b'mit v'shulchan ha b'kaisas ka'aros. So when it comes to bare absolute necessities, a bed and a table, that you don't have to cheshbon. But things in which you don't really need, that you actually should sell. That is part of the equation of the 200. So mashna kaisas ka'aros low. How come when it comes to cups and plates, no? The omer mi'isili. So it's the other way around. When it comes to cups and plates, so the omer mi'isili, it's repulsive. So midam shulchanami omer lo mekabel iluye. I'm not comfortable. So l'chayra, what's the difference? L'chayra, you shouldn't have to sell either of them. So omer Rabba bereda Rabba b'machresha de kasva. It's not just talking about stam kalim. We're talking about a plow, literally, which is made out of silver. Now, obviously, when we're talking about something like that, only this needs to be sold, as such a plow is not necessary. What is before the collections come, what is after the collections come? It says Rashi, the Beis Din is going to evaluate and to see, did you correctly take the tzedakah? So if it's true that you have more than 200 zuz and you are now being evaluated, and then we realize, and then you collected the tzedakah, then that's a problem, and therefore the Beis Din is going to collect. However, if let's say you had 199 zuz and they gave you $1,000, so now you're over the 200 zuz, but at the time that you collected it was okay, so then they're not going to take it from you. Now we see the next Mishnah. Yisayma, so you have this girl who does not have a father in the picture, and she wants to get married. Shesiyasa ima o acheha. So we know that min rabbanan, the mother or the older brother can marry her off. Medaita, and it was done with her consent. And the truth is, even if she accepts a small amount of money for the dowry, Rashi says in mechilasa mechila really doesn't mean anything because a katana is not a bas das. The kostavula b'meyo b'chamishim zuz, and they wrote this small amount into the ksuba for her dowry, which is certainly less than isnechasa of 10% of the father's or the state's net worth. When she gets a little bit older, more mature, she can get what is really coming to her. As Rashi says, isnechasim. Because as the dowry, the recommended amount is that the father, if he's able to give 10% of his net worth to the girl for her marriage. You can actually calculate this very simple. If while the father was alive, he married off his first daughter, and we see how much that he gave to her, so now that the father's no longer in the picture, so that amount is how much she should get too. Not necessarily. Sometimes a person's financial status changes. Maybe he gave her more or less because of his financial status when he was alive. We evaluate, we make an assessment, and that is how that's how it is calculated. Okay. Weiter. Second. Okay, so that was the Mishnah. So Omer Shmuel, Parnasa Shoman Ba'av. When it comes to Parnasa, says Rashi, Habas Yisayma. Again, we're talking about this girl who does not have a father. Shabasli Nase, she wants to get married. Nois Nala Nedunya, Kafi Oimed. So we give according to how much we assess. Sha'anu Bikim Be'avia, Vatran Okamson. Is the father someone who's generous or is he stingy? So we have to make that, there's an umdana we have to calculate. And it's something in which, again, we evaluate the father. Meisvei abonois nizonois. When it comes to a daughter who gets mazonos, umisparnosois menechsi avihen, from the father's estate, ketzad. How do we do it? In Omer, we don't say ilu of you kaim. If the father was alive, kachva kachoy. This is what he would give her. No shomenes anachasim. We look at the monies, the estate, but noisin and we give to her. My love, parnasa sabal. Says Rashi, nedunya shel nisuyin. L'chayra, this is referring to the actual dowry, and we see we don't evaluate whether what the father would have done. We just look at the estate. This is referring to the mazonos that she gets while she's still with the brothers. And as before she gets married, her father died. So one of the things, which is Tanai Ksuba, is that the daughter, the Yisaima, will receive mazonos until she becomes a Bulgaris and she gets married. So that's what's referring to. So we don't think about how much the father in that situation, but when it comes to Nedunya, we do. 1 second. It says mazonos and parnasa. Must be that they're two separate things. My love, achas parnasas abal, achas parnasas atzma. Lo, idi befarnasas atzma. Both of them are referring to mazonos. Vilkasha. Habechil v'shtia, habelvusha v'kisuya. But one's talking about food, and one's talking about clothes. But these are something which Rashi says, Shaman hanachasim, im anihu naisinla, kafi mashin shishninu. You give to whatever she's able to, whatever you have. If you don't have a lot of money, so obviously you have to make that evaluation. But it's not talking about the nedunya, because that actually, the parnasa of the nedunya is shaman ba'av. Tanan. It says in our Mishnah, his status changed when he was alive. How much he gave to the first daughter, to the second daughter. Now what do? We evaluate the nechasim. My ani, my asher. That he was wealthy regarding looking at the actual estate, not whether or not he's a kind or stingy person. It's hard to understand, because how could you disagree with this? If he was very rich and he gave her a massive amount of money, and then he lost all of his wealth, he has no money to give to the second. He died, but there's no money to give to the second girl. So there's no way you could argue with that. Love ani badas, asher badas. It means that he's poor in his head. Stinginess is not being wealthy, is in reality and also in your head. So says Rashi, ein badai delitin lo nedunyas asher el nedunyas ani. He changed in his approach. So if we know that the amount of money is the same in the estate, but the difference is we knew he was very kind and generous, all of a sudden we realized that he became stingy later on in his life, so then maybe in that situation we don't give the same amount. Now the Katani Shomin as an Chasim and Eisenlaw. Now the Tanakama said that we evaluate the estate. Alma Lozlin Basar Umdana, Utiyafta de Shmuel. So this is a question on Shmuel, who says that we go after the umdana of what the father would give, but according to the Tanakama, we see clearly not like that. So who do you Rabbi Huda? So he says that he'll hold like Rabbi Huda. The Rabbi Huda Omer Imasia Bas Rishayna Yinasal Shnia Kaderach Shinasal Rishayna. That you're right. But what we do is we do go Basar Umdana, not like the Tanakama, but according to this opinion, that we look at how much a person gave to the first daughter, and we assume that's how much he was going to give to the second daughter too. The name of Rabbi Huda. So he should just said that explicitly. So Rabbi Huda Habamina Davka Hasia. You would think only when the father at least married off the first daughter to Gali Daite, then it's clear probably that he would have wanted, if he was alive, to do the same thing for his second daughter. Of a lo hasia lo. But if, let's say, he did not marry off his first daughter, so then in that situation, maybe not. Maybe we don't make this assessment. Kamashmon. Time to be umdana. We look at the guy. Loshna hasia, loshna lo hasia. Doesn't matter if he married off the first daughter or the second or not. We can still make this calculation based on our knowledge of who this person was. And the reason why it mentions a case where he was alive and he did marry off the first one, so we have something in clear, concrete proof how much he gave the first girl, even in that situation, the Rabbanan say you don't go basar umdana, even though you have some type of proof to the contrary. Amalei Rava, focusing on the word Rava. So Rava says, Rav Chista, Darshinan Mishmach. It was darshaned in your name, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. So it was actually darshan that the halacha is like him. Normally, hey, Rava should be a will of Hashem. Kolki hani mili malyasa tidrashu mishmi. That all the beautiful drushes should be in my name. Does Rava really say? Did Rabbi really say this to Rav Chista, that the halachas are Rabbi Yehuda? Posanya Rabbi Oimer Basin is Zainis min Achin Noitelis Isnachasim. It says that you have a daughter, so she should get Isnachasim, which means we don't evaluate the father, we just always give 10% of the estate. V'yomer Rabba Hilchas Rabbi Pulukasha Ha Di'amde Ha Deloi Amidne. It's just a practical situation. If he's wealthy, then yeah, we should give 10%. However, if he's not able to, then in that situation, you should just give as much as you can. Question 13. Kama noisin leparnasos bal lahalacha. So kafi oimed, we evaluate him. Sha'anu b'kiyim b'aviyah v'atron or kamsen, is he generous or not? V'im lo yadinan daita noisin le'isun chasim. If you don't really know so much, or if the guy's wealthy, he should be able to give a tenth. Masu is a story, but Nasan la Rabbi Echad Mishneim Aser Menachasim, and he gave this amount of wealth to his daughter, so for this girl. So Kashan Hadadi Allah Shemaimina Had Imdine Hadol Amidne. It all depends on the person's wealth. If he's able to do it, then you should give this amount. If he's not, we assess based on his character how much he would give. Shmamina. Going back. So Amar Rebbe, Basin is Zenis Min Achin, Noitelis Isin Achasim. So you should give 10% of your estate for the dowry. Armalul Rebbe L'Debrach, according to you, Misheshul Eser Banais Ubain. Let's say you have 10 daughters. And let's say all 10 daughters get married at the same time. Ein Lul Ben B'Makam Banais Klum. Because you're going to give 10% of your wealth to 10 of your daughters, and all of a sudden, that's all your money, and your son gets nothing. So the first one takes 10%. Shnia b'ma what's left over. So if you have $100, you give $10 to your first daughter. Now you have 90 left, so 10% of 90 is 9. So you still have a little bit left, not much. And then afterwards, everything is divided up equally among the sons. As we continue with Samaches on the base. So it means, what do you mean? Each child will take their own. Says Rashi, so what do you mean that you go and you divide each equally? It means if they all get married at the same time, then it's divided equally. That's what it's referring to. Mesaile Rabas, the Yom Ramasya is a proof. If she comes to get married, kachas, all these girls at the same time, noitos Isur echad. So you give 1/10. Ella noitos Isur ke'echad. You give a 10th just like one. Okay. Tanabanan. Habanois, when it comes to your daughters, Bein Bagru ad shlo nisu. Bein nisu ad shlo bagru idu mizunisayin. We know that if the father dies, so they receive mizonos from the estate. The assignment only have to do it up until the time they become a Bulgarish, 12 and a half, or when they get married. Rebbe. Even though they didn't get married, they do not lose the Isin Achasim, the 10% for their dowry. Says Rashi, Isin Achasim, Diksavar Lutikin la Nedunya Elohecha de Mitzvah Bekatnos Obenairos. The Nedunya was only when they got married when they were young. Avo Bagra Istalkalam Hahi Beis Legamri. Okay, that's not according to the opinion of Rebbe. Rabbi Shimon Eliezer Omer Af Ibdu Parnasasan. She actually does lose her dowry, which means the dowry was only when she was either a katana or a naira. However, once she gets older, no. when she gets older, she loses her ability to collect the dowry. Ketzad hein oisois. So exactly how is this done? So soiches lehen balim moitziin lehen parnasasan. Says Rashi, you rent out sheyisu oisan, you marry them actually yisbegru until they become a bogeres moitziin lehen parnasasan, and then you have to give them the dowry. Rav Nachman, Amrli Yehuna Hilchos Rebbe. The halach is in fact like Rebbe that she's not going to lose her dowry even if she gets married later on. Esfei Ravel Rav Nachman Yisayma Shiyasa. When it comes to a Yisayma that gets married by her ima or achel, by her mother or by her older brother, Medaita, as we saw in the Mishnah, with her consent. The Kostavul B'Meya O B'Chamishim Zuz, and it says that she collects this tiny amount. Mishetagdil, even though she was Meichel, but her Mechila is not a Mechila, then when she gets older, so what can she do? She's able to, when she gets older, collect the dowry. Now, Tayyamid Katana, the only reason why she can collect her 10%, the Isra Nechasim, is only because she got married when she's a Katana, Mashma HaKadayla Vitra. That if she did this when she was a Gedayla, then she was Meichel, she was Mavater. Says Rashi, Alma Stamla and Tana Kirishim and Elezer. So L'chayra, it's not true. The halach is not like Rebbe. The halach is Kirishim and Elezer that she does lose her dowry. Lo kasha. Hadam machoy, hadalo machoy. It's all totally whether or not she protested that when if she'll lose her 10th, her Isna Chasim, when she does not protest. Says Rashi, Hadyamer Rabbi lo ibdu. When did she not lose? It's kishimichasa al meiser isenechaseha. Is when she protests and saying, no, I want my isenechas, therefore she won't lose it. However, she doesn't say anything. She's like, she's Michael. So how can I mastabdim kain kash Rabbi to Rabbi? Because if you don't say this, there's going to be a stira. The sign of Rabbi Omer Basan is this ben achin. So again, when it comes to a daughter who gets mizonos from the brothers, no, tell us Isna Chasim. When she gets married, so she's able to collect 10% of the estate for when she gets married off. Nizaynus in, she ended this low, which is mashma only while she's being fed. Says Rashi, im bali nasi ba'oiden nizaynus dahainu b'katnos or b'nairos. As we said, you only get mizonos when you're a katana or a naira, not when you're a bogeris. At that time, you don't get mizonos anymore. So it's possible that just like we're saying that she can collect in the chasim, the Yisra Chasim is only when she's at that age. But when she's not, when she's older, she can't. But Rabbi says that she doesn't lose it. If she protested, as we said, then she will not lose the Yisra Chasim, which is what Rabbi said before. However, in this situation, if she does not protest, so when she's a Bogeris, she no longer gets it. Amar le Ravina la Rava, focusing on again on the word of Rava. Amar lan Rav Adabarava Mishmach. It was said in your name, Bagra Inusricha Limchais, that when you're a Bogeris, it's not necessary for you to protest, says Rashi. Shafilu Michasa, even if you don't protest, Lu Ibda Isna Choseha, which is a great chiddush, that even if she doesn't protest, she still will not lose her dowry. Nises, if let's say you have a naira that got married in a srichalim chais, she also does not need to protest. Bagram Nises, however, if she is bogeres and she got married, srichalim chais, so she would have to protest that she does not lose it. Is it really true that Rava said this? Rav Nachman, he asked a question. He asked a question about a Yisayma. V'shanile hadamachi hadalamachi. So we ended up making a distinction whether she protests or not. Only when she makes a macha will she not lose her rights. But Rava says here, even if you don't make a macha, lo kasha hadaka mitzana minayhu hadaloka mitzana minayhu. One is when they're still supporting her. One is they're not still supporting her. Says Rashi, Hadiyam Ravani says benarus. When it talks about a girl who's a naira between 12 and 12 and a half, and she's getting married, the Ein Limchais, that she still does not need to protest, can go into mitzana minayu, because she's still getting mizonos. Achar shenises yishum deka mitzana minayu, since she's still getting mizonos. Hu deka shaska. That's why she was silent. V'machla al parnasasa. she was not really moichel on her parnasa, but she didn't want to say anything because she's also getting mazonos, so she didn't want to stir up the pot and get him all upset because she's still getting mazonos. So while she's still getting mazonos, she doesn't have to say anything. However, once she's not getting anything else, then she needed to protest, otherwise she's going to lose it. Amar Abhuna Amar Rabbi Parnasa enu ketanai ksuba. When it comes to parnasa, it's not ketanai ksuba. The question is, what does that mean? Which is going to be question number 14, which we'll see in a second. My enu ketanai ksuba. What does it mean? Parnasa, the dunya, the dowry is not part of the is not ketanai ksuba. Inamed ilu parnasa tarfa mimishibadi. Does it mean that regarding to be able to collect from mushubadim, the chasam mushubadim, that there's a lien on it, that you can collect the dowry from it? Tanai ksuba will tarfa mishubadi, because we know that when it comes to tanai ksuba, you can't collect from mishubadim, so it means you could. So my kamashlam, what's that coming to tell you? Hamas b'chol yoyim moitzin lo parnasa v'yin moitzin lo mazonos. We know that already, that when it comes to the dowry, it is tarfa mishubadim. We already know this. That's not a chiddush. The el the ilo parnasa. So that happens to be true, but that is not what we're That's not what we're talking about over here. That's not the chiddush. Rather, the el the ilo parnasa gabi namim mataltali. Now, when it comes to parnasa, you can even collect from matalton. But tanai ksuba mikarkoi gavi mataltil gavi. We know that anything which is tanai ksuba, you can only collect from karka, but not the matalton. The Rabbi gavia. He says that either way you can collect in either situation. The sanya, as we learn, whether it's karka or matalton, moitzin l'mozon the isha, we could take it for giving mazonas for the girl. Uvanos. Divri Rabbi, Elomai parnasa enu ketanai ksuba look at the sanya. If the father says, B'shas misasai, Rashi says, at the time when he is dying, that al yizaynu b'naisav, I do not want you to give any food to my daughters from this estate. We do not listen to him. Al yisparnasu b'naisav nechasav, but if he says, because that's tanai ksuba, it has to be done. However, he says, I do not want you to give a dowry, shaymin lo, shaparnasa enu ketanai ksuba, says Rashi, al yifarnasinu b'shaymin lo, shaparnasa enu chayv alav, ketanai ksuba. It's not an actual obligation, el chayv al yisaymimhu, heichadlo tziva av shalul farsin. If the father specifically said, don't give my daughters when I die mazonos, we don't listen to him at all. However, he says, I do not want my daughter to get any dowry. We do listen, because it's not a tanai ksuba. The only time we say that the isna chasam is necessary is when the father did not make that stipulation. The father did not make that stipulation, then in fact that is the din, that you have to give, again, either umdana, how much the father would typically have given, or 10%, depending on the wealth of the estate. However, if he would have made the stipulation, it's a valid stipulation because it's not tanai ksuba. I'm going to stop there. Let's see if we have any questions over here. Question TA22. Le'inyan elu shnei devarim isa b'gemara de parnasa enu k'mazonos. In which two ways is parnasa not like mazonos? So we said this last statement. This is TA22. So it's not the maskana is that if the father says, do not give the parnasa, dowry to my daughters, that we listen to him. You can't do that by mazonos, but also the gavi mimishibadi, that you are able to collect it from a shibud. Question TB 24. My hilchas Rav Huna Rav Parnasa enu kanai ksuba. Ha'omer b'shas misaso al yifarnasem b'naisam b'nachasim shaymin lo mashtein kein al yizayno tanai ksuba hi ein shaymin lo adkan.